The Galactic Council had long observed the various species under its dominion, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Among them, humanity stood out, but not in a way that inspired fear or respect. To the Council, humans appeared as a species that thrived on diplomacy, favoring peace over conflict. Their history was marked by numerous attempts at peaceful resolutions, even in situations where war seemed inevitable. This tendency to negotiate rather than fight led the Council to a singular conclusion: humans were inherently weak, perhaps even afraid of war itself. The Council's members, a coalition of the most powerful and advanced civilizations in the galaxy, often discussed the peculiar nature of humanity. They saw Earth's efforts to build alliances and mediate disputes as signs of a species unprepared for the brutal realities of galactic warfare. Reports from various sources highlighted humanity's aversion to conflict, their preference for diplomacy, and their willingness to compromise. These characteristics were interpreted not as strategic wisdom, but as fear, a deep-seated reluctance to engage in the violence that was so often necessary to secure power in the galaxy. In their eyes, humanity's reluctance to wield its military might was not due to a calculated strategy, but rather a fundamental weakness. The Council, accustomed to dealing with species that sought to dominate through force, found humanity's behavior almost quaint. Their peaceful nature seemed to the Council like a flaw, a vulnerability that could be easily exploited. With this perception firmly in place, the Galactic Council began to see Earth as a ripe target. The planet's rich resources and strategic location made it an enticing prize, one that could be claimed with minimal effort. Overlord Zorath Carven, the Council's supreme leader, viewed humanity as an easy conquest, believing that a swift and overwhelming show of force would bring Earth to its knees. Confident in their superior technology and military prowess, the Council believed that humanity, driven by fear, would fold quickly under the threat of annihilation. The decision was made with little debate. The Council agreed that a single decisive strike would suffice. There was no need for prolonged conflict. Admiral Vekla Tharos, commander of the invasion fleet, assured the Council that the operation would be a simple one. The plan was to position the fleet on the outskirts of Earth's solar system, issue a demand for surrender, and await the inevitable capitulation. If humanity attempted any resistance, the fleet would unleash its firepower, obliterating any hope of defiance. As the Council's fleet prepared to move into position, Earth's leaders received the first hints of the impending threat. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity as Earth's representatives reached out to the Council, seeking to clarify intentions and avoid conflict. President Alisara Drex convened a meeting with her top advisors. In the underground war room, the air was thick with tension. General Dorian Kale, Earth's military commander, argued for immediate preparations for war, while Ambassador Lena Salas, Earth's chief diplomat, urged caution and continued diplomacy. Dr. Kalan Idris, the head scientist, revealed a powerful new defense system, the Aegis Protocol, but warned of its untested potential. Earth's leadership was divided. General Kale, supported by Colonel Nyla Serrano, advocated for a preemptive strike, knowing that Earth's defenses, while strong, could only hold out for so long. Ambassador Salas, on the other hand, believed diplomacy could still prevail. In the end, President Drex made the difficult decision: Earth would not bow to the Council, but they would first seek to avoid bloodshed. Earth's diplomats sent measured, cautious messages, focusing on finding a peaceful resolution. Humanity, still unaware of the Council's true intentions, believed that reason and diplomacy could prevail. The Council, however, interpreted these diplomatic efforts as further proof of humanity's cowardice. The calm and composed tone of Earth's communication seemed to mask an underlying fear. Each message from Earth was seen as a desperate attempt to avoid the inevitable. The Council, now even more assured of their assessment, dismissed these overtures as the last gasps of a species that knew it was outmatched. With each passing day, the Council's confidence grew. They were convinced that humanity would surrender without a fight, sparing the Council the inconvenience of a military campaign. The fleet, now fully assembled and positioned, awaited the signal to advance. Overlord Zoreth Carven and Admiral Tharos prepared to issue their ultimatum, fully expecting Earth's leaders to capitulate immediately. In the Council's chambers, discussions turned to the aftermath of the conquest. Plans were made for the administration of Earth's resources, the integration of its population into the Council's domain, and the potential rewards that would come from this easy victory. There was no doubt in their minds that humanity would submit. The idea of resistance seemed absurd, a futile gesture from a species too fearful to wage war. And so the stage was set. The Council, blinded by their own arrogance, prepared to enforce their will on Earth, confident that humanity would crumble under the weight of their superiority. They had misjudged humanity's nature, mistaking caution for fear, diplomacy for weakness. The consequences of this miscalculation would soon become apparent, but by then it would be too late for the Council to reverse the course they had set. The Galactic Council's fleet arrived in Earth's solar system with the precision and power of a well-oiled machine. Their ships, massive and imposing, filled the space around Earth, casting long shadows over the planet below. This was not just a show of force, it was a clear declaration of intent. The Council's fleet was designed to intimidate, to cow any species into submission with its sheer presence. As the ships settled into position, the Council transmitted their message to Earth's leaders, demanding immediate and unconditional surrender. The message was direct and uncompromising, leaving no room for negotiation. The Council made it clear that Earth's choices were limited: submit or face complete annihilation. In response, Earth's leadership remained calm. The message from the Council had been expected, though its bluntness was still a shock. Earth's diplomats, well versed in the art of negotiation, crafted a response that was both measured and strategic. They acknowledged the Council's power but did not yield to fear. Instead, they sought to open a dialogue, to explore any avenue that might lead to a peaceful resolution. The tone of Earth's response was calm, calculated, and devoid of panic. Despite the calmness in Earth's response, there were signs that humanity was not as fearful as the Council had assumed. Behind the scenes, Earth's military forces began to mobilize, quietly preparing for the worst. The mobilization was done with utmost discretion, ensuring that the Council remained unaware of the growing readiness within Earth's defense systems. Advanced technology, long kept in reserve, was activated. Military leaders convened in secret, discussing strategy and contingencies, all while maintaining the facade of diplomacy on the surface. The Council, however, remained oblivious to these subtle shifts, confident in their overwhelming power. They dismissed the possibility that humanity might resist. To them, Earth's continued diplomatic efforts only reinforced their belief that humanity was desperate to avoid conflict. They saw the calmness in Earth's communications not as a sign of resolve, but as a mask for underlying fear. Finally, the Council decided it was time to end the charade. They issued an ultimatum to Earth's surrender within the next 24 hours or face total destruction. The ultimatum was delivered with the same confidence that had marked all of the Council's actions. They were certain that humanity, faced with the stark reality of their situation, would finally capitulate. There was no doubt in their minds that Earth would yield, if only to avoid the annihilation of its people. In response to the ultimatum, Earth's leaders sent one final message to the Council. The message was succinct and to the point, a stark contrast to the measured diplomacy of previous communications. It contained a simple warning the Council should reconsider their course of action. Earth's leaders made it clear that while they preferred peace, they were prepared to defend themselves if necessary. The warning carried with it a tone of quiet confidence, a confidence that was both unsettling and easily dismissed by the Council. The Council, as expected, disregarded the warning. They saw it as a final desperate attempt by a weaker species to avoid the inevitable. Their confidence in their overwhelming superiority was unshaken. The idea that humanity could pose any real threat to their plans was laughable. The Council, so sure of their impending victory, gave the order to prepare for the final assault, convinced that the next communication from Earth would be one of unconditional surrender. As the deadline approached, the Council's fleet readied itself for what they believed would be the swift and effortless conquest of Earth. Their arrogance had blinded them to the reality that humanity, far from being cowed, was quietly preparing to demonstrate a resolve and capability that would soon shake the very foundations of the Galactic Council's power. When the Council's ultimatum expired, Earth's response was immediate and unforgiving. Humanity had prepared for this moment with a precision that the Galactic Council had not anticipated. The first strike was a masterclass in coordinated warfare. Within moments of the deadline, Earth's military launched a barrage of attacks that were both surgical and devastating. Advanced human technology, previously unseen by the Council, came into play. Weapon systems far more advanced than anything the Council had imagined tore through their defenses with terrifying efficiency. The initial engagement was swift. Council ships that had once seemed invincible were reduced to debris in a matter of minutes. Humanity had revealed its hand, and it was far stronger than the Council had ever considered possible. The tactics employed by Earth's military were unlike anything the Council had faced before. The precision of the attacks, the seamless integration of human technology with their battle strategies, and the ruthless efficiency with which they dismantled the Council's fleet left the Council reeling. They had expected a weak, disorganized resistance, but what they encountered was a well-oiled war machine, honed by centuries of conflict and innovation. Human forces moved with a purpose, targeting the most vulnerable aspects of the Council's armada, exploiting weaknesses that had never before been exposed. The battle, which the Council had assumed would be over in minutes, turned into a decisive victory for humanity. The Council's forces, caught off guard by the ferocity and effectiveness of the human assault, were annihilated. As reports of the battle's outcome began to filter back to the Galactic Council, the impact was immediate and profound. The sheer scale of the defeat was beyond anything the Council had prepared for. Entire fleets, which had been the pride of the Council's military, were gone. Strategic assets that the Council had spent centuries amassing were obliterated in a single brutal encounter. The initial shock was followed by disbelief. The Council members struggled to reconcile their earlier assumptions about humanity with the reality of the situation. How could a species they had deemed weak and fearful achieve such a decisive and overwhelming victory? The realization that they had gravely underestimated humanity began to sink in. The Council, once so confident in their superiority, found themselves facing the cold, hard truth they were up against an enemy far more formidable than they had ever imagined. Panic began to spread through the ranks of the Council as they received more reports of human advances. The initial victory was not an isolated incident, it was the beginning of a relentless campaign. Humanity, no longer content with defending their home, transitioned to the offensive. The Council's territories, once considered impenetrable, were now under threat. Human forces moved swiftly, striking at key targets with unerring accuracy. Every attempt by the Council to regroup and mount a counterattack was met with devastating countermeasures. The Council's fleets, now fully aware of the power they faced, were unable to stem the tide. Each encounter ended in the same way, with the Council's forces decimated and humanity advancing further into their territory. The psychological toll on the Council was immense. The confidence that had once been their greatest strength now became their greatest weakness. The sheer determination and precision of the human forces became a nightmare for the Council. Their once unassailable position in the galaxy was crumbling before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Every strategy, every tactic they employed was countered with a level of efficiency that left them stunned. Humanity, it seemed, was not just fighting to defend their planet, they were fighting to ensure that the Council would never threaten them again. The relentless nature of the human advance shattered the Council's morale, leaving them in a state of disarray. What had started as a show of force by the Council had turned into a desperate struggle for survival against an enemy they had vastly underestimated. As humanity's relentless advance continued, the Council was forced to confront a reality they had never anticipated. They were losing, and losing badly. The warriors they had once considered reluctant and fearful had become their greatest nightmare. Every move the Council made was met with a calculated and devastating response. The galaxy, once under the Council's firm control, was slipping through their fingers, and the fear they had sought to instill in humanity was now their own. Humanity's hesitation to engage in war was not born out of fear of battle itself, but from a deep and profound understanding of the true nature of war. Earth's history was filled with conflict that had scarred its civilizations and shaped its societies. Centuries of wars, ranging from the small skirmishes of ancient times to the global conflicts of the 20th and 21st centuries, had taught humanity hard lessons. These wars had shown that, while war could be necessary, it was always a path fraught with immense suffering, loss, and unintended consequences. The devastation of entire cities, the loss of millions of lives, and the long-term impacts on generations were lessons etched into the collective consciousness of humanity. This historical context fostered a philosophy that, while war might sometimes be unavoidable, it was something to be entered into with the greatest caution. The real fear was not of fighting, but of the aftermath of broken lives, the destroyed worlds, and the haunting memories that would linger long after the last shots were fired. This understanding of war's true cost informed humanity's reluctance to jump into conflict with the Galactic Council. Earth's leaders were acutely aware that a war with the Council would not be a simple clash of fleets, but a galaxy-spanning conflict that could engulf countless worlds. They knew that, once the first shot was fired, there would be no turning back, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Humanity's goal was to avoid such a conflict, if possible not out of fear of losing, but out of a desire to prevent the horrors that would inevitably follow. War was seen not as a means to an end, but as a last resort, a terrible option that would only be chosen when all others had failed. This reluctance was a reflection of a mature and seasoned perspective on warfare, one that valued the preservation of life and stability over the pursuit of power through destruction. However, when humanity finally did engage, the brutal efficiency of their warfare left the Galactic Council reeling. The battles that ensued were stark contrasts to the Council's expectations. Human forces fought with a level of ruthlessness and precision that left no room for mercy. Each encounter was meticulously planned and executed, with Earth's forces targeting the Council's weaknesses with unerring accuracy. The Council, which had believed in their own invincibility, found themselves on the receiving end of a campaign that showed no hesitation in its execution. Human forces employed tactics that were both innovative and terrifying, often catching the Council off guard and exploiting their overconfidence. The devastation wrought by these engagements was total. Entire Council fleets were obliterated, and their once secure strongholds were left in ruins. The Council's commanders, who had once scoffed at the idea of human resistance, were now sending frantic reports filled with descriptions of overwhelming human firepower and relentless attacks that offered no quarter. The psychological impact on the Galactic Council was profound. The brutal reality of human warfare was far beyond what they had anticipated. They had expected resistance, but nothing of the scale or ferocity they now faced. The Council, which had previously viewed humanity as a minor obstacle, now found themselves confronting an enemy that fought with a level of determination and effectiveness they had never encountered before. The human approach to warfare was not just about winning battles, but about utterly dismantling the enemy's capacity to fight back. This relentless pursuit of victory left the Council's forces demoralized and shattered, unable to comprehend how they had so severely misjudged their opponent. In desperation, the Galactic Council attempted to sue for peace. The realization that they could not win this war became painfully clear, and the only option left seemed to be seeking terms before total annihilation. But the terms offered by humanity were harsh, reflecting the gravity of the situation. Humanity demanded nothing less than the complete disarmament of the Council's forces and a full admission of guilt for their actions. The Council, accustomed to dictating terms rather than receiving them, balked at these demands. Yet they had little choice but to consider them, as their options dwindled with each passing moment. Despite these desperate attempts to halt the advance, humanity's response was unwavering. Earth's leaders, driven by the knowledge of what was at stake, refused to relent. The Council had shown their true colors when they had initially sought to subjugate Earth, and humanity understood that leaving the Council with any significant power would only lead to future threats. The decision was made to push forward, to ensure that the Council's ability to wage war was completely neutralized. The relentless nature of this campaign was a direct reflection of humanity's understanding of war's consequences. They would end this conflict decisively, ensuring that the Council could never threaten another world again. This relentless pursuit of total victory was driven by a cold, calculated determination to protect not just Earth, but the entire galaxy from the Council's tyranny. Humanity's war was not just one of defense, but of liberation, a final push to ensure that the horrors the Council had unleashed would never be repeated. And in doing so, they revealed the full extent of their resolve, a resolve that had been grossly underestimated by the Galactic Council. The war, which the Council had once hoped to avoid with a swift and decisive show of force, had now turned into their worst nightmare, a nightmare from which they would never wake. The sustained human assault proved too much for the Galactic Council's once formidable empire. What began as a confident show of force from the Council quickly turned into a desperate struggle for survival. The key worlds that formed the backbone of the Council's power fell one by one. These were not just military defeats, they were the systematic dismantling of the very pillars upon which the Council had built its dominion. Humanity's strategy was as relentless as it was effective, targeting not just the military might of the Council, but also its logistical and economic infrastructure. Supply lines were severed, communications networks were disrupted, and the political alliances that the Council had relied on for centuries began to fracture under the pressure of sustained human offensives. As human forces advanced, strategic alliances that had held the Council's empire together began to disintegrate. Allies of the Council, seeing the tide turn, either abandoned the cause or defected to humanity's side, hoping to avoid the same fate that had befallen the Council's core worlds. The once unified front that the Council had projected to the galaxy was now a patchwork of isolated and increasingly desperate factions, each struggling to maintain its own survival. The Council's command structure, so used to being on the offensive, was ill-prepared for the level of strategic brilliance that humanity brought to bear. Every move the Council made to regroup or fortify its positions was anticipated and countered by Earth's forces, leading to a series of crushing defeats that left the Council's military in shambles. The collapse of the Council's power was not just a series of battles lost, it was the unraveling of an entire empire. With each passing day, the Council's control over its territories weakened. Worlds that had once been loyal to the Council declared their independence or fell into chaos as the central authority crumbled. The infrastructure that had supported the Council's reign, the trade networks, the military outposts, the governance structures were systematically dismantled by human forces. What had once been an unassailable galactic power was now a fragmented and leaderless entity, struggling to hold on to even a fraction of its former glory. Humanity's approach was methodical and unyielding, ensuring that the Council's capacity to wage war would be utterly destroyed, leaving no chance for a resurgence. In the aftermath of the conflict, the devastation wrought by the war was evident across the galaxy. Entire worlds lay in ruins, the result of battles that had been fought with a ferocity rarely seen in the history of interstellar warfare. The economic and social impacts were equally severe, as the collapse of the Council's empire sent shockwaves through the galactic economy. Trade routes that had been in place for centuries were disrupted, and the power vacuum left by the Council's fall led to widespread instability. Yet amidst the devastation, humanity emerged as the dominant force in the galaxy. What had begun as a desperate defense of Earth had transformed into a campaign that reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity, once underestimated and overlooked, was now both respected and feared. The other species in the galaxy, having witnessed the sheer power and strategic brilliance of Earth's forces, were quick to recognize the new reality. Humanity was now a major player on the galactic stage, and any future conflicts would have to account for their presence. The remnants of the Galactic Council, those who had survived the war, were left to contemplate the mistakes that had led to their downfall. The arrogance that had driven them to underestimate humanity had been their undoing. Now, with their power shattered, they were forced to negotiate with Earth on equal terms. It was a humbling experience for the Council's leaders, who had once believed that they could dictate terms to any species in the galaxy. The tables had turned completely, and they now found themselves at the mercy of those they had once sought to subjugate. The terms of the peace were harsh, reflecting the destruction that the war had wrought. But they were also a clear message to the rest of the galaxy: humanity would not tolerate aggression, and those who provoked war would face the full might of Earth's forces. The war's end marked the beginning of a new galactic order. The balance of power had shifted dramatically, with humanity at the forefront. The Galactic Council, once the undisputed ruler of vast territories, was now a shadow of its former self, its influence reduced to a fraction of what it once was.